Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin. Tuesday, August 15th at around, I don't know, I guess it's like 9 a.m. And I'll be getting in well before 9:30. I feel I put a pretty good day in when I get started then. Fresh with this walk, I've got a 20-minute walk or so coming up, which is the reason for these videos. And, you know, I don't use any special equipment or anything. This is just my iPhone 6 SE, which is also my wallet. And I'm mixing it up a bit. I went back to iPhone, I guess about a year ago, because my Note 5 got a crack in it. And I love the Note series. And I started out on the Note 3, which is one of my favorite phones I ever owned. They regressed a little bit. Going with the Galaxy phone design for the 5 series, and I guess they heard everyone cry out and they used their most popular Edge design for the infamous Note 7 that I could have easily been on, but barely avoided. I guess that's a dodged bullet or some other weapons metaphor. And went to the iPhone 6 SE, deciding to go with a small phone because it was much less expensive, and the 7 was just around the corner, and the rumors were flying that it was not going to have a headphone jack. And I really love my $5 headphones. I'm not a music person, but I am increasingly becoming an audiobook person. I do like my podcasts as well, and always shout out Michael Kennedy and what he's doing with the Python community through podcasting. Check him out, very important. But you can only listen to stuff related to your field and your career so often. Sometimes you have to just sort of cleanse the palate. And so I'm an Audible Club member. I pay my $15 a month, and that gets me 1 credit a month. But through the good listen guarantee, or whatever it is, you can return them as often as you like. They just don't stay in your library, they go away. And you can't use just a web interface to do it. You have to start chat. Well, I guess chat's a web interface too. So my little hack is to have a script that I just copy and paste out of my Simple Note. So no matter what device I'm on, I can do this, because Simple Note propagates my notes everywhere. And I even put Simple Note on my new Kindle Fire HD 8, I believe it is, that I got for $50 on Amazon Prime Day. So I really gave in and let myself buy some of that cool hardware that's becoming real cheap, because in the field of SEO, you gotta keep your finger in, your hat in, you gotta keep your foot in the door, so, you know, all that stuff on all these different platforms. It's you know, it's a matter of, you know, putting your bets on horses, because they're not all going to become super important to know, but there will be some dominant ones. You're going to have to generally understand, you know, things like Alexa as their own distinct devices, with the Amazon Echo Dot and this stand-up video camera style one they're doing, which is very interesting, because, you know, Jetson's style video phones are now here. You won't have to worry about keeping them recharged. I'm thinking seriously about getting one for my daughter, but more likely I'll just start out with an Echo on either side, a dot, so that we can just make voice calls to each other by speaking to it. I think that's a lot easier than having to fiddle around with even a touch screen, as easy as it may be. So it's with great regret that I replaced my Paperwhite Series 2. I've been on 2 of them so far, and they get flaky. Now, I don't treat them great, because they do get shoved into usually my back pocket, and hopefully I remember they're there before I sit down in the subway, but sometimes not. So connections and stuff start to go bad after a while. And my Paperwhite, my second Paperwhite, the Series 2, that I've had for a bit over a year now, is starting to spontaneously reboot. The prompt comes up saying, would you like to reboot or exit, or, you know, 3 options, none of which are good. And no matter what I do, in about a minute the thing is going to be rebooting. So that is the opposite of the experience you want in the nearly book-like Paperwhite platform. So if you can't have near reading perfection in that wonderful platform that's usable on a bright sunny day at a poolside, you might as well be on something that can play your audiobooks as well. So I've been on the default Fire system for a few weeks. It's probably a month now at least. I got Addy One, the kid version, preloaded with the Amazon Prime Kid software. It was like $20 more and a year free of the service. I'll report back on that later. But as far as this, it's pretty awesome. After having the default experience for a while, I ended up installing Chrome. I don't think I have it fully installed. It's going to be installed soon, but as soon as I have Chrome and a SSH client, it's going to be a real terminal. I can imagine connecting a Bluetooth keyboard to this thing and being nearly as productive here as anywhere else I might sit down to do work. I use its little kickstand that's built into this manufacturer. I think this is the Kindle case that I'm using here. So I have the blue Kindle combined with a blue case, and so it has a kickstand arrangement, which if you put a little Bluetooth keyboard in front of it and had terminal software, it would be pretty awesome for a work session. I could Vim all day in that thing, Python coding or the journal. And because you have Chrome, you could do your Python coding, flip over to Chrome and see how it runs if it's a web app. And if it's not a web app and it lives in the shell, well then you don't have to flip it all between screens. Oh, but if it's something that does API trickery, like updating a Google Doc, you switch to Chrome not because it's a web app, but because it's a command line or scheduled app that's updating things in Chrome. So Chrome is your output. One of my interesting premises of my work that makes me able to do some seemingly high-end stuff that many people would believe you'd need to use BI software for, business intelligence, or maybe have a license to the Tableau software, or use one of these experimental things coming out from Google, like Data Studio. But I create some very competent dashboards, doing data pulls and doing some processing, and then just plopping the results of that into Google Sheets, which I update right there in that first tab in that worksheet. So whenever you pull up the worksheet, bam, there's your dashboard standing there. And if you need other types of work, maybe even the pre-dashboard process work, because dashboards usually are applying some sort of algorithm, some special view to turn it into actionable information. But that means all the steps prior to it becoming a dashboard need to either be stored somewhere or discarded. So if it's nice and efficient, that somewhere you can store it is the other tabs in the Google Sheet. If it's too heavyweight and it would make the Google Sheet take too long to load, be more prone to error because of the sheer amount of the data you're shoving in there, you can store your data pulls on the back end. If you're using Jupyter Notebook, that means your local machine. If you're using servers, it could mean your cloud server drive. But if you wire it to store that kind of stuff to the Amazon S3 data bucket or something else like it, you can just offload your historical data forever. Even the stuff you want to use for trending to see differences over time. Because what are you going to do? Shove it into this lightweight Google spreadsheet that all your, upper level stakeholders are loading every day to see their quick numbers. You don't want to put the dirty laundry in that file, unless the dirty laundry is clean and organized and can answer questions quickly that might be raised. But it tends to be big, fat, ugly JSON objects that was the response to API calls. So a lot of this stuff are these, web request to JSON or XML response, which not only is the data body of the response, but also potentially here goes the ambulance there. So when you do an API call and you want to store everything that you receive, it's more than just a JSON file, text, in that very popular format that everyone's using these days. By the way, Empire State Building, used to work up there. Shout out to Acronym, yay! Great marketing agency up there, check them out. Lost my train of thought, but it was definitely having to do with complexity. And pardon me while I reacquire state, which, by the way, brings up another point, another sort of nested point, is that statefulness is one of the most important issues in coding and programming. You'll find one of the most fundamental splits in how people approach and tackle and get religiously defensive about their solutions is the split between whether things are generally stateful or generally not stateful. And no one will ever lay it out clearly because it's one of the biggest misnomers in tech, but functional programming has very little to do with functions in the way that most people being introduced to programming think of functions. Functional programming means lack of state. There's very little use of objects in memory that just sort of float around, gradually changing state, and God forbid having some nested structure that could change over time, which is where memory, that's not really, I guess that could be considered a memory leak, but excessive memory usage can occur, especially when things travel recursively, and if there's any flaw in the way the system releases memory, you've got one of the classic fatal bugs, which is your system just gets bogged down and crashes. So the general avoidance of anything having to do with memory or state gets lumped under this term functional programming. No side effects. Mutable objects cannot be handed around. Although it leads me to wonder how in the world anything ever gets stored to a hard drive or becomes persistent in any way. So it is a fallacy and just another example of system designers and developers and everyone involved just makes the decisions of where to shove the complexity around. There is no such thing as statelessness. What? Humans aren't using it? No one's ever going to remember the answer, record it, and do it again, and create some persistent object somewhere? Of course there's persistence, and of course we live in a stateful world. So yeah, I guess some of the things I'm doing here, if I can backtrack my thought and make it circular, that would close it, wouldn't it? I am developing my online identity. I do like my t-shirts and feel very fortunate that I am in a situation where I can be that casual and people love it and it's nothing but compliments, but I am switching back and forth to a little more of a button-down appearance just to remind people that is part of who I am, and I can do that. I'm experimenting with clean-shaven face for identity's purpose. There's so many sub-discussions I'd like to do there. Nomadic systems, designing your systems so that you always are dealing with stateful versus stateless. You're also dealing with fixed positions versus relative positions, and how all paths ultimately are absolute, because you got to start from somewhere. And truly relative paths is kind of a myth. It's always in the context of some starting point, and that starting point is fairly open-ended about what that is. There's a lot of stuff in tech that is like, oh, your starting point should be, your IDE, or some already highly built up system that has a lot of dependencies. And while nothing is without dependencies, big aspect of tech is reining your dependencies in, getting them under control. Only having those that you know about and you're comfortable living with for a good long while, which probably should be in at least 10-year increments, because it takes about 10 years or 10,000 hours to master some topic. So when you get into tech or anything having to do with tech, which is so many things these days, you're gonna have about 3 opportunities to relearn everything you know, right? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into a career, and then you're probably gonna wanna retire or whatever. You choose at least one thing that you think is going to last for 10 years, so the carpet can't be dragged out from under you in tech. You can learn more than one thing in those 10 years. In fact, I expect many people will learn many things in those 10 years, but one of them, so you have a bunch of slots, right? 10-year increments, you can probably master 3 things in your professional lifetime. That's not even including your younger years, original passions. That can change over the years. Oh, I was talking about phone platforms in the Note 8. Yeah, I'm going to be moving to the Note 8, but let me make this circular. I'm almost at the office, and I can tie this all together. I only shoot these videos because I have this commute. It used to be a dog walk. There's lots of ways I can spin this now. Not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to keep my online presence going, because one of those professional options in life is always just to be so awesome without being a poser, just genuinely, people use the word passion. I heard the 4-hour work week guy say, when people say passion, what they're really talking about is what they get excited about, right? So I'm sharing my excitement. I was excited by the Amiga computer, probably my first love in tech, and didn't find anything really exciting until like the Raspberry Pi came along. I'm like, hey, the world has a second chance to not be sheep. In the second coming of the spirit of the 8-bit computing world, and experimentation and tinkering and building things into projects in the hacker and maker communities, rah-rah. But I just had a kid and couldn't get involved in that. Had a 1 million view YouTube video, that was nice. But then said, okay, time to get back to it. I have little slices coming up of discretionary time after I move and have less of a commute. The hour and 20 minutes or so each direction, plus a long talk on the phone with Addie, is gonna go away and become probably in-person visits with Addie. But all time spent with Addie that is not commuting is completely worth it, and I'm making such a right move. So the nature of these videos is gonna shift a little. My reason for doing them in the first place, I gotta find the open time slots. Maybe I'll put some production value into it, but they happen because I don't. I don't put any production value into these videos except the stuff that happens to walk around me. And every once in a while I think I'll combine my skills. I'm an automator of some form or another, right? Why can't I automate editing? Well, never in the Google sense, the way Google and Apple do it in their photo software. That's really awesome. That'll eventually edit my whole body of work into some, sensible book, whatever format that people could follow. But I'm not going to take the time to do it. Though I might do an 80-20 rule solution, where if I shoot 4 or 5 videos, maybe I can just select them in that certain order and say publish these in YouTube as one video, and I make that app, and that's my big venture into mobile or whatever. I would probably do it as a web app if I could. given that a web app would have access to the local resources enough to grab those 4 videos and do whatever magic it needs to do to make a YouTube upload look like it's just one video. Editing on this side, all the client server stuff, wonderful issues to work through. I also want to get a platform where I can do my drawing and terminal serving, and it's not terminal serving, it's SSH client stuff. Telnet client, they used to call it before it went all secure. So that plus the drawing, I love doing the drawing of the Note 8, and that's where it comes full circle. So I want all my platforms to be Telnet client capable, pen capable for drawing, and of course a web browser, preferably Chrome, so it has all my bookmarks. And maybe I'll use screencast software, like connecting iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil to be recorded on a Mac desktop using ScreenFlow. That might get all my check marks, and I might have my whole platform, so I can work in Vim and do some screencasting. Maybe I'll put a window up there, but I've been accused of being narcissistic and vain for that. But hey, everyone doing this YouTube thing has a touch of that, you know. Every extreme in moderation is actually a good thing. And let's see, that's the drawing, that's the headshot, Vim, being in a SSH client and doing typing through Vim. And you know, I don't know, these walking videos wouldn't fit into that scenario. That would all be sitting in a desk, but that would make excellent counterpoint, real-time, non-editing, continue the non-editing approach, but on the desktop, doing what I actually talk about in all these walking through New York videos. So that'll probably be my next step. That'll be coming up. So it's hardware issues, system figuring out, light touch, 80-20 rule, fixing what's most broke, biggest bang for the buck, all the rest of the stuff that I'm trying to get across here. And thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon, and don't forget to subscribe.